Okay, so Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum salam.
Please, should we start now or we have to wait for more people to join in?
I guess we can start, right? It's 11.
It's 11 now. Okay, so Asmau, I need to seek your permission.
So,
Am I allowed to start? Assalamu alaikum. Can anyone hear me? I don't know if anyone can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay. So, Asma, I'm sorry. I was asking if I need to seek your permission to go ahead.
Yeah, I'm fine. I mean, if we are starting or we're waiting, I'm okay with any decision you take. Inshallah.
Let me just sit down. Once again, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. My name is Aisha, host for today's program. First of all, I'd like to apologize for what should I say? I'd like to apologize for last week. We were unable to hold last week's program. Something we did not think would happen. It wasn't something we actually foresaw. As death can be, we are supposed to be prepared for death, but unfortunately, usually are not. Always comes visitor to us, but may Allah grant dead, all living, may Allah grant all the dead souls era, forgive their shortcomings and accept them in his judgment. Those of us living to may Allah forgive our shortcomings and to this. We are still trying to be shadowed with Sheikh Shiriandu. If we are able to do that, communicate the respect. Now, today's program, as we all know, we have our honorable sister, honorable mother, honorable auntie, honorable granddaughter with us, Haja Asma. I don't want to talk much. We all know her. Honor to be the one hosting her. I was trying to run away from it because it was her. Let me just. So I don't want to talk much. Let's just hope able to very good shall be well. May Allah accept whatever we are going to do. Make it a source of attaining his Jannah. No matter what we learn, may Allah make it easy for us to practice. Practicing is the most difficult. Allah make it easy for us, make easier. Hajjasi.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. O you who believe, fasting is prescribed for you as it was prescribed for those before you, so that ye may attain piety and guard against evil. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I am honored myself to be present today amidst sisters and brothers in Islam. I believe a few men asked if they could join, so my address is in the right order. Our conversation today is centered on Ramadan, although we are looking at something that talks about our level of consciousness within this month of Ramadan. And that is why we couch the topic contemplation and mindfulness in Ramadan. Basically, when we look at contemplation and mindfulness, I would be using both words interchangeably as its meanings overlap each other, but each meaning also can stand distinct. So I'll be very specific on those descriptions. Basically, when we look at ourselves preparing towards the month of Ramadan, the ayah that I just read, which is in Surah Al-Baqarah, is an ayah that we would hear over and over, and we would recite it over and over. We would sing lullabies such as Welcome, O Ramadan, month of honor, the month of Al-Quran. These are all mentally preparation towards the holy month of Ramadan. Now, as we prepare, some of us also would do things like declutter our clothing, our wardrobes. We would even declutter our kitchen to see what are some of the things we have in there that we can share with other people, right? We would do all sorts of things, share with the orphans, share with the less privileged, all of these in preparation for the month of Ramadan. But the question is, while we prepare physically, how is the physical preparation connected with our spiritual being, and for the benefit of our discussion today, our mental being or our mental well-being? So contemplation and mindfulness is going to center on our preparedness towards this holy month. Although we are already in the month of Ramadan, alhamdulillah, and today we are counting 9, 8 respectively. That's how far we have come, alhamdulillah, is that while we prepared and we are in this month of Ramadan, how are we mentally connecting to the month itself? So contemplation basically would look at how is our physical activity connecting to the spiritual being, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. First of all, I would like to throw this question to us, and I wouldn't need a response. I just need everyone to reflect upon those things, because I believe that in one way or the other, we would all be guilty of at least one of the things that I would mention. One of the things, for example, is whenever we read our askar or we recite our askar, how many times have we not been distracted during the recitation of askar and either slide to pick up our phone, go online, surf through certain things, completely have a deviation of mind while we claim that we're reading our askar. Additionally, when we recite the Quran, how many times have we really reflected as we read along? Or how many times have we not paused and then our minds go lingering and asking questions about the dunya, thinking about what happened a day before while we claim we're reading the Quran? At the same time, when we perform Taraweeh, the little ones at home always say the longest prayers. And then even we as adults, sometimes we say these things. So the question is, when we pray Taraweeh, how many times have we not been distracted through our prayers? And then we lose focus along the line. We think about the next suhoor that we are going to take already. That is if we haven't planned towards it earlier enough. All of these things speaks volume about our mental preparedness towards this holy month of Ramadan. And it also speaks volume about whether we are truly connecting through our hearts, through our thinking, and then eventually through our behavior, because these 3 steps is what encapsulates the psychology of a man. And by man, I mean mankind, not just the male gender. So how we think, how we feel in the heart, and then eventually how we behave, or how our sensation or our behavior, either towards ourselves, that is when we are alone, or in public, that is when we are with other people. So I just need us to start on this reflecting pointers, that in the last days that we started Ramadan, how much have we really connected through our spiritual activities? Even though it is manifested physically, how has it really connected with us emotionally, or how has it connected with us mentally? In a world with consistently amount of information, there's always something new, there's always something going on, with all the anxiety, with all the panics, all of these things are happening consistently. It is important that in such a fast-paced world, where not just food is fast food, but our life is equally fast life, because everything that we do is almost in a split second, and then it's gone, and then it's over. The question here is, in such a world that we live today, how are we going to ensure that we are being mindful towards this holy month, so that it does not leave us empty? It has come as a great visitor. We try to prepare to welcome it, but how are we ensuring that we are making the best out of it through mindfulness and through contemplating? So contemplating, in other words, in the Islamic literature, it would be referred to as tafakkur. It is an act of thinking and an act of reflecting that encompasses the human psychology. So you think and reflect, and it encompasses, I mentioned the heart, which is the feeling. I also mentioned the thought processes, which has to do with our tongue or our mind. And then I also mentioned eventually our behavior. So basically, contemplating refers to how our thinking is reflected towards these 3 elements that encompasses the human psychology. So how is contemplating in the lens of Islam? Contemplating through the lens of Islam is reflecting on the ni'mah of Allah, on the blessings of Allah, on the rahmah of Allah, not deviating or connecting to the fact that Allah is al-Khaliq, that He created. So for instance, as psychotherapists, one of the things we teach clients as a form of stress reliever, using contemplation or using contemplating, is that to walk through nature. So you can either walk through green, or go to the beach, or be at the waterfall. These are all nature. Now, in the general psychology, when we talk about contemplating, it would be for you to look at this and connect it with your soul. But how do you connect something with your soul when you miss the very origin that your soul is coming from, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So in Islam, contemplating in this month of Ramadan would be during the day. For example, if you happen to be in an environment that has a lot of green, you can take a few minutes of walk, at least 15 to about 20 minutes of walk through the green, and observe nature. And while you do that, you connect this creation to the creator. And you do this through repeating or remembrance of Allah. Al-Khaliq, that he created all of these, and you look at how the value of these things connect with you. This is one of the areas of contemplating in Islam. Another way that we can contemplate is through recitation of the whole Quran. I have mentioned, and our ulamas have mentioned times without number, and we all know that this is a month of Quran, and this is the month that, as much as possible, we are all encouraged to read the Quran as much as we can, and then try to reflect on it as well. How do we ensure that while we read the Quran, we connect the stories, the messages, the pointers, and everything that it encompasses to the sender of this book, to the owner of it? That is another form of contemplating, that when you read, such as a story that is narrated in the Quran, we do not read it with an empty mind, that we immediately connect it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and find the message that is being communicated to us. And according to the American Psychology Association, APA, which globally we all do respond to, especially Ghana Psychology Council, is that contemplating and mindfulness is one sure way of reducing stress. It also improves memory, and then it generally helps in our overall psychosocial being or our overall emotional being, right? So you can see that there is the secular way of contemplating, but the focus here today is looking at it through the lens of Islam or Islamic psychology or Islamic psychotherapy. So I mentioned about taking a stroll when you have the opportunity to do so, visiting nature and connecting it with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then recitation of the Quran. Now let's quickly look at mindfulness. Yesterday, our initial speaker, my own brother, Kish, shared a certain image with me. And I told him that if I were sharing my screen today, I would have shown that image. The image read, "Do not be mindful, but rather be mindful."
Mindful.
So here it's talking about do not be mindful, meaning that do not fill your mind over things that are not necessary for your well-being. And your well-being can either be social well-being and can be emotional well-being or can be physical well-being, however you want to look at it. Don't fill your mind with garbage. Usually this is how I say it in very plain language to my students or clients. Don't fill your mind with garbage, but rather be mindful, which is what our conversation today is about. Now, how do we attain mindfulness, especially in the month of Ramadan, in the month of Quran? In Islamic psychology, mindfulness is believed to be achieved through a process known as muraqabah, which in other words stems from a word meaning to observe something intensely, to closely look at something, meaning that in mindfulness, you have to closely pay attention to yourself. Basically, in psychotherapy, we refer to mindfulness as a form of metacognition. Metacognition basically is looking at being self-aware about yourself. It's quite a double thing, right? So you should be aware about yourself. So the self, the inner self, paying attention to the self, which is your physical being, which is your emotional being, which is your psychological being or social being in every aspect of your life. So in this case, if we are talking about mindfulness, we are looking at how does an individual focus, pays close attention to how their thoughts are being processed, or what sort of thinking comes into your mind. In Islam, if we look at mindfulness, basically what we do is to ensure that we are able to put a gap or that thin line between the moment an evil thought is coming into your mind and the moment you reflect upon it and the moment you act upon it. We know, and we have been told by our scholars, Shaitan whispers. He will continue to whisper until, because his objective is to lead us astray, and may Allah keep us guided on his path alone. I mean, so the whispering of Shaitan comes in what we call in secular psychology as negative thoughts, but in Islamic psychology, we would refer to it as the whispers of Shaitan. So these are negative thoughts that comes into your mind. Now, one of the benefits of being mindful about life is that it helps you. Remember, I mentioned that it's one of the things that helps us to deal with stresses or deal with our stress level. So when we are being mindful, then it helps us to be able to know at what point our mind is conceiving any negative thoughts. And inshallah, once we are able to capture that moment, then we are able to create a barrier between the conception stage and let me use the word delivery stage, or in performing an action that would have been followed by this negative thoughts or by this whispers. But for a person that is not mindful, this is what happens. They are often taking decisions that are knee-jerk. So a negative thought comes to your mind about your sister, about your brother, about a friend. And then the next minute, you allow yourself to internalize these negative thoughts. And then you say, well, thoughts don't come to head just like that. I've had times with a number clients who say this, and then we would correct them. Thoughts don't just come to mind just like that. Perhaps, and then the mates follow. Perhaps she's really thinking this evil towards me, or he's really thinking this evil towards me. And then we allow Shaitan makes way through our hearts. So the first process is thoughts. Then the next process is your feeling, that is the heart. So he whispers, and then you allow it down, then the feeling comes in. And imagine if the thought is negative, then what is going to be the feeling? Negative, right? The feeling is going to be an awful, ugly feeling, a feeling of anger, a feeling of frustration, a feeling of not wanting to belong to somebody who perhaps has done absolutely nothing towards you, or has only thought about positive things about you. But for a person who is mindful, they are always able to create that safe gap between their thoughts and their feelings. And these two is what is eventually going to manifest in how we behave towards each other and even how we behave towards our own self. So making this clear as an ability for us to be able to reflect upon ourselves, and then understanding that mindfulness is a matter of connecting. Here again, then mindfulness would be connecting with our Rabb, connecting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Connecting and appreciating that it is negative thoughts does not come from Allah, subhanallah. That it is a whisper, and that your innermost self is a beautiful being. And so if you allow for a time frame, you would have noticed, or you would realize that the negative thought fades away. This is why knee-jerk decisions in most cases would lead us into trouble. either would lead us alone or would lead us with other people that we are able to coach to move along with us. So this is a way of ensuring that our state of thinking is healthy, and so our hearts would be healthy. So for anyone that needs to have a healthy heart, it doesn't start from directly the heart, but it starts from the mind. And so the mind would need to also be kept as clean as possible. In mindfulness, we are also made to appreciate and understand that Allah is Al-Alim, He is all-knowing. And all-knowing means that He can see in our hearts. He knows that which is made visible, and He knows that which is hidden. There is nothing that is hidden from Allah. So what it means is that as you are contemplating or as you are thinking through any thoughts, when you connect your mind to the fact that this thought that is running in my head, this plan that I'm intending to execute, that Allah is all witness of this plan of mine. This is a way of helping us or helping to restrain our soul or our innermost being from being negatively influenced or from being brainwashed or negatively impacted. So the thought of keeping Allah or being Allah conscious or being God conscious is so important in mindfulness. And this is also going to help us as we go ahead to pay attention and then more focus. At the beginning of my presentation, I made some few pointers that I said we should just keep in our mind and then run our thoughts through it. One of the things I mentioned is our askar. True mindfulness, askar is one of the important things that we can do through mindfulness. When we reflect over askar, we take the time off, we take a break, we take that silence. You are within yourself. So you are not speaking out, you're not talking, no one can hear you. But then you're talking to yourself. So it is your innermost self talking to your innermost self. That's why I termed it, or it is being termed as self-awareness of the self. So it is an internal conversation that you have during mindfulness. And if
we are doing it class by class.
And if an individual could spend at least 20 minutes of their time during this month of Ramadan in mindfulness or through Islamic meditation, then inshallah, we would come out of this Ramadan being better people. When you take this time, this is a time that you are alone with yourself. This is the time that you speak the bitter truth to yourself. This is the time that you reflect on your Creator. This is the time that you start to give gratitude. You start to appreciate. You start to ask yourself, what did I do to deserve this mercy of Allah? What did I do to deserve this glory? So mindfulness is a very healthy practice. It's a very healthy activity that we should all inculcate into our life. Inshallah, if it is something that you have not been doing, then you should inculcate it. And then hopefully, once may Allah grant us life out of Ramadan, it will be something that will become a part and parcel of us, inshallah. Now, what are the importance or significance of mindfulness? In Islamic psychology, we understand, and having explained what mindfulness is, meaning having a deeper conversation with the inner self, and contemplating is reflecting on the rahmah of Allah, the blessing, the nature, and all the things that Allah has created. When we look at this too, what are the benefits that would come to us in connecting with our deen or in this month of Ramadan? One of the importance is that it helps in making us in khushush, in salah. right? It helps us to comport ourselves in Salah so we can have the utmost benefits. Because during Salah is when there is the tendency, if we let it, to go around the whole world, scouting through things you have done 3 years ago. For whatever reason, certain things just pops into your mind. And then I talked about how mindfulness helps us to create a gap between, hey, this is a negative thought, and then we invoke the refuge of Allah from shaitan. Because if you're mindful and then you're getting this negative thoughts, then you can immediately say you are conscious, so you are able to say that, no, this is wrong at this time. So you are able to say, I want to be lying in a shaitan regime. And then, inshallah, your mind skips out of this. So in the same way in Salah, if we have practiced mindfulness over a period of time, we would start to observe that when we stand to say Salah, we are able to stay focused on one task at a time. And that is the importance of mindfulness, being mindful. So for example, as a therapist, we use mindfulness in teaching clients who are binge eaters, or who have some form of mental health condition. For example, for people that are binge eaters, using mindfulness is we are able to have them keep their mind on the meal at a time, and then eat and stay focused on the meal. And dietitians have also mentioned that practice helps actually in proper digestion of the food. So sometimes it's not really our tummy, but it is our brain that is so busy such that the food we eat is unable to digest, because we allow the brain to go through a process, which is another process of stress process, is that there is a hormone that is released, which then influences or inhibits proper digestion of the meal. I don't want to divert to this. Basically, what the point I'm trying to make here is to say that our level of attention, or that absolute attention, is increased in Salah when we are able to practice mindfulness. Another thing that it is also able to do is it helps us to deal with life's difficulties. So for example, take a look at the moment when you sat down alone. And remember, mindfulness is practiced when you're alone, and shaitan whispers mostly when you're alone. So this is also another beautiful way of interrupting the whispering of shaitan, and then rather inviting something much more healthier for you and for your soul. So it is easier for us to deal with life's difficulties when we practice mindfulness. How does this work? Imagine that you are constantly feeling negative, whether it is about yourself or it is about the people that surround you. And you start to feel that everybody around you has something against you, or they don't like you. You would soon develop some form of anxiety when you find yourself in this situation. And if you do not practice mindfulness, that is supposed to give you some sort of break, then your condition would grow, and you probably soon fall into depression or some form of mental health condition. But when you practice mindfulness, and I have said that over and over, it helps you to deal with, it helps you to be conscious of the fact that certain thoughts should not be given space in your mind, that certain thoughts should not be given opportunity in your mind, that you should not allow the influence of people's negative comments into your head. Don't rent a space for garbage in your head, in your mind. Do not rent a space for garbage especially not in this holy month of Ramadan. When you sit and you can feel that you are becoming negative, practice mindfulness through Islam, and I've mentioned it, okay? Another important is through remembrance of Allah, through our zikr, through our constant azkar that we do, it helps you to connect. For each azkar that you say and you understand what you're saying to yourself, you see that there is a communication between you and you. And that is the most beautiful form of communication that ever would exist. A communication between you and you, because that you, the second you, has Allah element in there. The second you is your soul, and your soul would always and forever be connected with its origin, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that time of mindfulness is never a waste. It is never a time that should be allowed for just scrolling through things that would not benefit you. Remember that in the 3 activities that I've mentioned, and you can go ahead and increase your number of activities. This is just something brief, because as much as possible as I'm discussing mindfulness, I am also being mindful of the time. So it is important that as we reflect, that we are able to communicate, that our soul and our physical being is able to connect. And that point at which it meets is a point of self-satisfaction. And that is a feeling that you want to experience. That is a feeling that grants you this relief. Remember, I mentioned that mindfulness, and as a research work, it's one of the ways of relieving stress and helping us to deal with life's difficulties and life's challenges. When the world is all over, when you feel like you're sinking, when you feel like nobody understands you, when you feel like you're disconnecting from your Rabb, just remember that you need a time for you to speak to you, that you need just a new time where you are able to communicate internally. And while you're doing that communicating, don't forget that that tiny bit of gap, that thin line between allowing negative thoughts and counter-reacting that negative thoughts is going to be the overall you at the end of the day. It's going to speak volume about you, because that is what people would see physically, it would manifest physically, and you cannot hide that. That is what people would say, and that is what it's going to mirror in the eyes of people. Also, in our consciousness through mindfulness, I spoke about the interval between our thoughts and then when we react to things. Is that interval period, it's an important period where we seek Allah's refuge, where we are able to say, this is not something I want to be engaged in. So in totality, mindfulness is one of the sure ways that we can use to help us stay focused in this holy month of Ramadan. While we are conscious about our life, while we try to practice as much as we can to benefit in this holy month of Ramadan, we would waste time if we just let the month flow and the days go by without really being conscious, and not just conscious at the superficial level, but conscious at the innermost part of our conscience. That is where mindfulness kicks at. The innermost part of the self, the subconscious, the deeper person in you, that voice when you're alone, that is the the part of consciousness. That is where mindfulness hits at. So as much as we are doing all the spiritual practices, my call today is a reminder for myself and to everybody that has joined us, is that create that inner connection for yourself. For each day that passes, ask yourself, how did I become better? And the question people ask is, how do I do that asking? So the answer today is, do that asking through mindfulness. So if you did not remember anything at all, just remember the fact that you want to become better, that you want to connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through mindfulness. Because in that mindfulness, you would bring every element of our spiritual being. You would bring every element of our worship. You would bring the Quran. You would bring how you reflect upon the Hadith. You would bring how you reflect upon the creation of Allah. When you walk through, you would bring how your innermost self is, your true self. Sometimes people tell us things about ourselves and we are quick at wanting to deny it. But when you sit alone with yourself through mindfulness, you would find the answer, whether that is truly you or really it is something that people are just saying about you, and which is likely to be untrue. So if you're looking for a way of responding to yourself to answer certain questions that are deeper thoughts, that are questions that that stands deeper into your heart, your soul, the core of your being, practice mindfulness. So my message today is basically how we can maximize the benefit, the reward of this holy month of Ramadan through contemplating and then through mindfulness. It is so important that we do not let ourselves sink into the physical activities or even the spiritual activities by just doing it as acts of random spiritual activity. So before you stand to start your Tarawih, take a moment to ask yourself, how are you benefiting? How is this impacting upon you? There is what ulamas and scholars tell us, you're getting reward for the salah that you're doing. But the other benefit of the salah that connects with your innermost self, are you getting that or are you letting that slide away? And let's not forget, that is what would automatically going to create that change, that self-desired change that we're looking for, inshallah. So at this point, it's 11:48 on my time. I would want to take a break, inshallah. And if there are questions, allow for question. So over to you, our moderator, Sister Aisha. Thank you very much.
Assalamu alaikum. Please, we are please. Assalamu alaikum. Please, this is Aisha. I'm having a serious phone. Assalamu alaikum. Please, someone is giving us feedback. I mean, noise. We are hearing some music and all that.
I think if you can check and see who's.
Let's see.
Okay, say it then, Anna Fatima.
Yeah, say that and someone is an iPhone.
And then there's an iPhone. So if you can private them, or you should be able to, the host should be able to mute them.
Yes, kindly, because unable to do so. Should I be doing that? Assalamu alaikum. Alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
Okay. Alhamdulillah. Is still with us. Mindfulness, the month of Ramadan, and I don't want to say much. I don't want to say much because I actually missed out on a lot. I was having internet problems until I got to where Nasiba is currently. So I leave the audience finding their questions and have Asmau answer them. If you do have a question, please raise your hands and for you to do so. If any questions? I hope I can be heard. Please, any questions?
Yes, we can hear you.
Please give us feedback. Is there any questions?
Okay. There's a hand up. Not sure.
Nasiba, you should have a question by now, please. Yeah, can you listen? Prepare your questions, please. Okay, so I'm going to start calling names since no one is raising their hands. I'm
I
going
think
to.
there was a hand up, but I wasn't sure whose hand it was. I didn't see it.
Asma, please, it was me. I'm using Nasiba's
okay.
phone, so
Okay.
I kind of take and tapped on it. But Nasiba has a question right now, so let me give it. Please let me put up the.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Hajia, and to all other sisters on board. MashaAllah, I want to say Jazakumullah khair to Hajia Asmau. Though I joined the lecture quite later, but I think I have taken note of one or two things, inshallah. And we say Jazakumullah khair for sharing your time with us this morning. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you for your efforts, inshallah. So my question is about the parents who are, how do you call it, struggling between Ramadan, their ibadats, and their children. I want to know if there are some key points you would give them as to how to manage their time and then be able to like get the full benefit of the month of Ramadan. Because, you know, sometimes you wake up, you want to do your tahajjud, the baby is crying, they are also awake and all those things. Are there any, how do you call it, key points you think that when we inculcate into our time during this blessed month of Ramadan to make it a bit easier for us, inshallah? Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam. Thank you so much. I mean, this is definitely a very important question. And personally, I am in the same soup that you probably are in. I have 2 one-year-olds at the same time that I have to take care of. So you can imagine how tough that is. But first of all, I think that it's important that as mothers, as women, that we remind ourselves that parenting in itself or nursing a child in itself is an ibadah, is an act of worship. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rewards us, and may it also be beneficial to us in the long run. I mean, so having said that, that should help kind of give us that calmness or that starter point, okay? So you don't start with a negative emotion that I'm losing out on this month because I have to do this. I wake up for tahajjud and then the baby's all over and the baby's crying. But as I always say, it's important, and this is also an element of mindfulness, is that you structure your time. I know sometimes the time can be a little bit unstructured, especially for little babies below 2 years old or below 5 years old. It can be a little bit unstructured. But even within the unstructured time, we can also still plan our way out of it. This is it. Alhamdulillah, by Allah's grace, when it comes to Quran, for example, we can read the Quran on our phones the same way we can read it holding the Quran itself, the book itself. So for example, if you happen to be breastfeeding or doing something at the time in which that you are unable to hold the Quran, for example, switch to your phone. That's what I do. So I'm sharing my personal ways here. I would switch to my phone, and if I am doing something with the baby, I am stealing my time and reading through some pages because I have a goal for myself aside taking care of the family. You should have a goal for yourself. When it comes to askar, you can do your askar simultaneously. I did mention that the time of askar is an important time for mindfulness. But remember that it is worth it of doing something in between than doing nothing. So you would have to be conscious about stealing your me time at every given opportunity that you come. So you grab the opportunity when it comes. Set up a plan. If the plan is not working because some little being somewhere is missing into your plan, steal some time as and when you're able to for yourself. The bottom line is don't let any single day go by without something other than the nafil we say or the salah we say. No, there should be something extra for you each passing day. So at the end of the day is to have a concrete plan for yourself. Try as much as possible to stay committed to that plan. I would mention one thing that we do, as much as we talk about taking care of the home as women, we also spend a huge amount of time on our phones. This is the time that we can actually implement into something more beneficial for ourselves and our soul. You need to, in this month of Ramadan, if you haven't done this before, personally, I have a time calculator for how much screen time I spend on every app that is on my phone. So the moment it hits, if it is not something that is important, I would stop and then I would cut whatever conversation and then focus on the next thing, especially in this holy month. So as much as possible, look at how many hours you can spend on each thing and ensure that if it is not bringing any value to your soul and it is a waste of this pure month, cut that out. So that level of consciousness would have to be practiced fully before you can get the full benefits of this month. So this is what I do, and I hope that inshallah it would help other moms inshallah as well. Feedback. Okay.
Getting feedback from someone, and then unfortunately I'm not getting through to the person who created the Zoom meeting to get him giving. I don't know. Okay, someone else to ask another question. Abi by Adams. Habiba Y. Adams. Y. Adams. Can you answer? I'm sure.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I don't know why Aisha insists on calling my name when there are about other 21 or 20 participants. Aisha. Anyway, I joined I joined Haji Asmau quite late, but I got the part of the Kushu in Salah, and I think that really got to me. I would appreciate it if she would run it over a little bit, because honestly, I'm the kind of person that have a lot to think about when I'm praying. You know, that is when I remember certain nitty-gritties that I should do, things that are quite important, some calculations, you know, and all that. And I find that her saying that to show in Salah is actually mindfulness, and it is that which gets you closer to your inner self, which helps if you could, you know, run it a little bit over for me. Thank you very much.
Okay. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So basically you've actually said what I said in some kind of a summary. So what I was talking about is, when I mentioned khushush, is that I was talking about the benefits, the overall benefits that being mindful or the mindfulness practice brings to us and our being, right? So it's that when we practice mindfulness, what it does is that it's able to help us to understand the interval between the point of a negative thought. And I'm using negative thoughts here in reference to psychotherapy, secular psychotherapy, okay? And perhaps in Islamic terminology, I would talk about it as the whispers of shaitan. So the moment the whispering of shaitan starts, in between when it starts and then when you allow the information to sink from the first brain or the first part of your thoughts to the next, right? That is the point where you lose this. That is the point where we are distracted. That is the point where we go all and all thinking about the things that happened 20 something years ago, thinking about the fun activity that you had prior to Ramadan and things like that. You go all out and then your body is moving while your mind is not moving with you. So in this instance, speaking on the benefit of mindfulness is that once we are able to come into terms of when our mind sparks a negative thought or sparks something that is not beneficial to us, then we are conscious and we are able to stop it. So this is how mindfulness works. It helps you to know when the thought starts, and then you would truncate it so you don't allow it to progress into the next stage. Because in Islamic psychology, there are stages to which the thought processes happen. And it is quite similar to the stages in secular psychology as well, or in psychotherapy as well. So the thinking, there is the first part of the information, then it moves into the second stage of the memory, then it moves on and on. So that way, I don't want to distract so much into those details, but all is to say that your thoughts move from one stage to the other and the other until you are eventually lost in the present. And remember that mindfulness is remain present. Mindfulness is metacognition. Mindfulness is being aware or being self-aware of yourself. So be self-aware of yourself, right? So thinking of you through you, the innermost part of you, and then the outer part of you that everyone else sees. So this is how it moves, okay? So inshallah, if we're able to continuously practice mindfulness, that is having that bit of silence within ourselves and then reflect deeper, we are able to know when our brain is influencing or when our brain starts to conceive negative thoughts. And then inshallah, we are able to kind of create a barrier between the first stage and then the second stage. And then that way, in Salah, for example, the moment that thought starts to come in, the moment Shaitan starts to whisper, aha, do you remember that moment? Then, because you have been practicing mindfulness, the brain itself immediately connects to say, no, this information is unnecessary for this time. Then it creates a block and then blocks that information. Then once the information it blocks, you come into your consciousness, you come into the present, which is mindfulness immediately. And then you can tell yourself, SubhanAllah, I am in front of Allah. I am saying my salah, so not this thought. Then you would see that you were deviating, but immediately you come back to your senses again. And that is how, inshallah, we with consistent practice, we will be able to achieve that absolute attention in our salat, inshallah. So I hope that this time around you're well answered.
Okay. Jazakallah khair, Hajia Hassan. Please, we need a question from Sister Mina and then Sister Maida, respectively. Sister Mina, Maida, respectively. Once again, I'm sorry for the feedback we keep getting, Hajia Asmau. We really apologize for this. The person said that we tried to get in touch with him, but he doesn't seem to be at the moment. So kindly forgive us. We are really disrupting your lectures. Please do forgive us. As I said, question and answer sessions. Maida, we are waiting for you. Amina, we are waiting. Do you have any questions for us? A question, maybe a condition. A contribution. And then to the audience, I want to still apologize for the kind of feedback we are getting. Thank you for your patience. May Allah increase you in sabr. I don't know if I'm being heard because I mentioned Sister Maida. Maybe they are not online. Are they? Maida and Tina. If you aren't ready, maybe let me call another person. Zainab.
Right.
Zainab. Yes.
Hello. Assalamualaikum.
Alaikum salam.
I thought I have a confession to make.
Is someone talking? I'm hearing someone saying they have a confession to make. Is it?
It's probably the movie or something.
Oh. This is, I don't know who it is, but this person really has disturbed us. Okay, Hajia Asmau, since wants to ask a question.
Yeah, and I also
about mindfulness, I would want to say something about the mindfulness you talked about. I've currently been practicing it a lot. I remember telling Habiba that I think I'm gaining weight because I'm practicing it more often. It's giving me some form of peace. Whenever I think of something that bothers me in Salat, and like you said, we are really distracted in life. This time, we are personally, my always in chaos, in so much chaos. It's kind of it's really affecting me. So yesterday, I even wanted to, after performing Zuhur, I wanted to perform it because I was so distracted. I was like, my own kept everything reciting. I finished. In fact, my daughter came to hug me from behind. And the normal circumstance, I'm supposed to just leave her. Can you believe I pushed her actually? Yes, I pushed. That was when I realized that I really needed to perform the Salat again.
Yeah.
But I was so distracted by my thoughts. Like my thoughts kept distracting me to the extent that I was angry while praying. And usually when I'm in that thing, I know there are things, few things I do. I usually say it a lot. I say sometimes I need at my salat, I bite my lips. I bite a little. Just keep me alert. For me, it's and even in my own personal life, when I think about something that bothers me, the moment I start reciting or saying something that has to do with adhkars, like if I recite any adhkars, I quickly forget it. Then later when I remember it, I'm like, oh, so I actually forgot that I was thinking about this. I've come back to it. So let me just say, and frankly, I've started teaching my daughter how to say it too, because I've realized that it really helps me. When she tells me, Mommy, I'm scared, Mommy, this, I say, say it. Then she starts saying it. When she says it, like, Mommy, I'm not speaking. I'm not thinking about it again. So honestly, I was just doing it. I didn't know there was anything like that until I had this lecture with you. We had these lectures. So I really do appreciate it as usual. Sometimes it takes a professional to tell you that you should do this, to know that, okay, what I'm doing is right or what I'm doing is wrong. If I had not started this lecture today, I would have thought I was just doing anything. And perhaps I would have gotten to a stage where I would say, okay, it's not okay. I mean, let me just stop. Maybe it's not helping. Maybe I'm not making any progress. So let me just stop it and find something else. But alhamdulillah for your life. Alhamdulillah for the hikmah that has given you. Alhamdulillah for your patience, and alhamdulillah for the kind of love you have for us, and then for the and for the deed. We really do appreciate
So sorry,
you're spending this never be redeemed in any. It's okay. Can you hear me?
Yes,
yes.
It just breaks at some point.
Yes, this over 1 hour you've spent with us can never be redeemed unless through blessings from Allah, and we pray to Allah to grant the most blessed of this month in His rahmah, in His blessings, and pray that it's only that it doesn't only touch you, but it touches your entire progeny. We as you've been patient with us, so should Allah
be more patient with you. He's a patient, but we pray that he grants you more of his patience and grants your progeny more of his patience. Now, to our audience, we are really sorry for the kind of feedback we've had today. We greatly apologize. I pray Allah grants you more patience as you've had with us. And I pray that whatever it is that we've learned today, we are able to practice it. Now, the problem I have with us of this, we of this generation these days is we sit in lectures, we just hear. Yeah. We don't listen, we just hear. Go back, practice a day or two, and then that's it. But I've come to understand one of the things that we struggle through is understanding what we are, who we are, and then as Muslims, knowing very well that we really need to constantly practice what we learn. Practicing it is it's really pulling us away from the deed. Unfortunately, we do not know. Not practicing it because the truth is we are all bombarded with a lot of harsh realities in life. And if you do not make constant efforts at practicing the little you hear, the little you learn, you get lost. So may Allah make us practitioners of his deen. May he make us people who are steadfast in his deen. May he keep us steadfast in his deen. The deen belongs to him. We are just people who are to practice it for our own sake. May he make it easy on us and grant us everything we do. I see Sister Amina has kind of raised her hands. If I'm not mistaken.
I actually want to just pass a statement based on your remarks. Okay, so you mentioned that this is something that you've been doing without really knowing that it was something that was actually recommended, right? So I just like to mention that in practicing mindfulness, if you practice it as and when you feel like, you don't really get the impact as you should. So it has to be a conscious thing. It has to be a calculated thing. So for example, you give 20 minutes every day. Remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala likes the deeds that are frequent or that are regular, that are conscious. So when you're conscious about something, the impact is always much better than when you do it as and when you feel like it. So that way you don't really get the connection. So let's try as much as possible to make this a conscious thing. So if you're doing it every day, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, is better every day 15 minutes than 2 hours once a week. Something like that, yeah.
Okay, so Sister Musa, Achaja, can you take more questions? It seems her hands are up.
I think we can take one more question before we go.
Assalamu alaikum. So my question is, if you are somebody who is new to this mindfulness, how does the person start? Because sometimes starting something is very, very difficult. You sometimes say that you would want to start it today or tomorrow, but it becomes a bit difficult to even start with. So what advice would you give to somebody who just heard about mindfulness and how he or she can start?
Okay, all right. MashaAllah. Would you permit me to challenge you?
Sure.
Okay, great. I love to challenge people, right? Because I like to be challenged as well. So let me challenge you to start mindfulness today, inshallah. So you make a promise to yourself that today's Sunday, that you're going to start. You can do this to make it the night of Monday, right? So after your suhoor, you can create 10 minutes. Start small, okay? Just put 10 minutes, put a timer on your phone, put the phone aside, and then set 10 minutes countdown. Now sit alone with yourself and do nothing. Just be silent with yourself. Don't say a word openly, okay? Now in this time that you're silent, you have an opportunity to reflect on multiple things. Choose one of the name of Allah, one amongst the beautiful names of Allah, and reflect on. Okay, so that you can decide on which name ahead of time, so that when you sit in that 10 minutes, you do not use that part of that 10 minutes to now say, okay, I'm deciding, oh, let me pick Ar-Rahman. No, I'm going to pick Al-Khaliq. No, I'm picking, no. So decide on the name that you're going to work with, okay? Sit in that 10 minutes. It's supposed to be a 10 minutes of absolute silence where you are speaking with your inner self, reflecting on one thing. Do that. After you're done, after the 10 minutes, take a book or a journal or anyhow that you journal, okay? Write out how you feel or how you felt after that. Repeat that again, inshallah, the next day, and then the next day after, and follow how your inner self is starting to feel different. You would see, if you experience any form of anxiety, you would start, after 7 days, inshallah, you will start to realize that your level of anxiety is, the more you do it, the less anxiety you experience, inshallah, okay? And do this with the intention. You know, everything in Islam, in the deen, is your intention is important. So when you're doing this, do this with the intention that I am doing this mindfulness to connect with Allah. And so when you're doing this, as much as you're benefiting yourself, if you are using Askar at some point or the Quran at some point, you would see that the reward is a dual way, because Allah rewards you for whatever you are reciting, and then inshallah, you are also benefiting yourself, okay? So I hope that you take over this task or this challenge, and then inshallah, let's see how this goes. And I'm happy to get feedback from you, okay?
Sure. Surely do, inshallah. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay, Sister Aisha. So I think this makes it official then.
No.
As we are nearing Salat.
And thank you all for joining. Hopefully next week, inshallah.
Yeah.
We have
Inshallah.
with another.
Yeah, and thank you so much, everyone. Oh, Sister Fatima, yeah, I see you. Thanks so much. Yeah, very much.